gonna give my Discord a kick. Yeah. Oh, that's way better. Hey, you guys were sounding robotic, and I was like, well, the problem must be on my end, because you said you could hear me fine. But we're good now. Just in case. Yeah. Well, the only thing that always bothers me with Discord is I still don't know how they make any money from it, and I just wonder if one day it'll just disappear. Like, it's good, and I do like it, except for a couple of things, but I do just wonder sometimes if, like, we're not gonna get to a point where one day it'll just be gone.
For almost 20 years, the NASCAR Cup Series started its season in the state of California on a road course. From 1963 to 1981, the top drivers in NASCAR went left and right at the now defunct Riverside International Raceway to kick off the new season each January. Now, nearly 40 years later, the Precision Racing League is ready to kick off their new season at the track's Cup schedule successor here on the Global SimRacing Channel. We welcome you to the virtual Sonoma Raceway in Sonoma, California for Race 1 of the 2020 Season 3 Precision Racing League Cup Series season, sponsored by iRacing Flea Market. I'm Justin Prince. On some of the booth tonight is eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver Christian Challoner. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Talk about a challenging place to start off a new campaign. Let's take a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around Sonoma Raceway.
Welcome to Sonoma Raceway, one of California's most famous road courses. It resides just north of San Francisco. It's been host to a wide variety of styles of racing, including sports cars, Indy cars, motorcycles, and even drag racing. But in recent decades, it's become most well known for holding one of NASCAR's rare road course weekends. For most tracks, this cornucopia would be a stretch, but considering the array of 5 different layouts to choose from, it's quite easy for the circuit to be adapted to any series needs. Most of the layouts clock in at around 2 to 2.5 miles in length and always feature an impressive amount of elevation change. This means many of the corners present the driver with a blind entry or apex. Some of these have a very distinct visual look, making them instantly recognizable. Corners such as the chute and the final hairpin feature street course-like walls surrounding the track, while the carousel is both picturesque and challenging. With few long straights, passing is often considered very difficult, but it rarely leaves races with a lack of action. Mistakes can be easy to make, offering opportunities for the brave. And it's not just the track itself which is tough. The pit entry's narrow path requires precise driving for those looking to make up time and leapfrog their competitors during stops. With more than 40 years of racing under its belt, Sonoma has become a staple for West Coast race fans. And what could be better than a glass of vino on a sunny hillside while the sound of engines echo around you?
That was a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around Sonoma Raceway. Now, these drivers all set and buckled up in practice at the moment for what is a challenging race. Let's bring in my broadcast partner, Christian Challenger, because talk about a place to start off a new campaign with a new slate. It's a very difficult slate to start off 2020 Season 3.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an extremely difficult track. I think this is probably the most difficult of the 3 road courses that we tend to see in Cup. We've obviously got Sonoma, the Roval, and Watkins Glen, and I've always found that this one's the hardest. It always has the hottest track temperatures. Right now it's over 120, and it's just really a combination of a lot of very difficult corners that all tend to lead into each other, and if you have a small mistake, it tends to cost you in a big way.
Keep in mind that the layout for the Cup Series in the schedule changed back in 2019 with the usage of the carousel. That removed the addition of the dog leg and added an extra couple turns and an extra couple tenths of a mile here to this racetrack. 2.53 miles, 12 turns expected today here at Sonoma. Now, before we get into a recap of how things went last season, I'd like to remind you that this event has a new race sponsor for the beginning of round number 1, the iRacing Flea Market. iRacing Flea Market is the place to go for buying and selling sim racing equipment, boasting the largest sim racing buy and sell group with over 20K members. Be sure to join and look around today. iRacing Flea Market, the #1 sim racing page on Facebook. The series is also sponsored by Diecast Kings, your home for the best selection of NHRA and NASCAR diecast cars at diecastkings.com. Once again, that's diecastkings.com. You can also find them on Facebook at facebook.com/diecastking. Series is also sponsored by Road Trip Transport. Whether a tractor or a truck or anything in between, you can move it. Specializing in all kinds of flatbed freight, call Road Trip Transport at 251-525-7429 or find them on Facebook at facebook.com/road-trip-transport-inc. Series is also sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products include incredible immersion and realism for every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. For more information, go to ButtKicker.com. Plenty of different moving parts and plenty of different sponsors on board for this upcoming season. Let's take a look at how last season fared for these drivers in 2020 Season 2. It was back-to-back championships for Ballistic Union's Richard Regan Jr. with 400 total points, with Joshua Daniels, Adam Zemke, Charles Sumner, and Pat Harvey rounding out the top 5 at the end of the campaign. Of note, Richard Regan Jr. finished with 6 victories in 2020 Season 2. In the team championship, Whataback Racing had the best run by just 2 points, though, was the difference between them and Skidmark Motorsports. That was after they outscored Skidmark Motorsports 77-65 to end the campaign. As a group, Rescue Racing Pilot Performance Group 24/7 Racing rounded out the top 5 in the team standings. But it's a new championship today, which means the details, let's go through those, Christian, for this new season.
So round 1 of 10, always 10-week series in the PRL, and 28 laps tonight. normally timed races of 1 hour, but with it being a road course and no cautions and things like that, we're obviously able to do a full distance race. Fixed setup as always, no fast repair this week, and a 24 incident limit, which might actually come into play because it is pretty easy to pick up at least 1 X per lap here.
Going to be very difficult indeed here at this racetrack. Lots of mistakes being made, and keep in mind, weather was something a lot of the drivers have talked about over the past 2.5+ hours. The track temperature has been varying very dramatically. We're talking with some of the drivers before today's race, Christian. Track temp has swung up to as high as 135 degrees Fahrenheit, currently in the 120s. Air temp 79, partly cloudy skies.
Yeah, and these cars are always difficult, especially on a hot track, and obviously the hotter it gets, the slicker it gets as well, and especially around here, you always struggle with rear grip, getting off some of the tighter corners, obviously the final hairpin, as we see driver having a huge moment right there, just coming past the flag stand, and it gets obviously even more difficult as some rubber goes down and the heat goes up, and the longer you go into the run, the less grip you've got, and it's always a tire management race.
And the strategy is going to be very interesting, too, because they're just outside the estimated window to make it on 1 tank of fuel by a couple laps or so, Christian, for the total distance today.
And then that's an interesting factor as well. Obviously, the short pit is very, very powerful at road courses, but it does mean that you're going to be exposed at the very end of that second run if you do take a stop right in the middle of this race. And with it being the longer layout, with the old Cup layout, it was actually a little bit easier to sort of plan the strategy, whereas with the carousel, the lap being longer means it's just even trickier to get that balance right. You don't want to have a scenario where you come out with fresh tires and then get stuck behind guys who are still out there on their old tires, because you'll lose all the advantage of the short pit.
Drivers have now finished up their practice. The fastest times in practice was 1:37.1 by Joshua Daniels, Richard Regan Jr., Danny Cervantes, James O'Brien, Bradley Hawley rounded up the top 5 in the practice session. Here's a look at the track specifically. And keep in mind, this is the IRL layout to help showcase this. It's a very difficult track, even for the 5 minutes and 2 laps of qualifying we're about to see here, especially that run through the carousel you talked about, Christian.
Yeah, the entry to the carousel is very, very difficult. Obviously, it's a little bit of a downhill into that left-hander, and if you brake just a little bit too late, the rear end does tend to come around, and once it starts going, it's really difficult to actually get it back, and you will definitely lose that lap as well. And with this being a 5-minute qualifying session, the drivers are able to get out there and do 2 laps, but it's very it's very tight to get the out lap plus the 2 hot laps in.
And it's expected to be a very tight season overall, because 59 drivers expressed interest for 2020 Season 3. At least 15 confirmed new drivers who did not race in Season 2 are expected to make starts in Season 3. Amongst them, the Riding Shotgun team members, they have 4 different drivers in their group today, including 1 returning driver this season. Many other teams are also brand new this season. Adams Family Racing, new for the season. Jelly Rolls Racing connected some drivers who were with various different groups. And don't forget others such as Velocity Racing Team expect to make starts, as well as FEG Motorsports throughout this campaign, Christian.
Yeah, and obviously we've got the drivers who were kind of the dominant force last season, Richard Regan Jr., Bradley Hawley, and obviously those drivers are going to be the guys that everybody's benchmarking against, but with new drivers, new teams as well, there's always the chance that you're going to see a new competitor come out, and obviously the first couple of rounds of a season, it's a little bit difficult to judge at a road course. Obviously it's a predominantly oval series, but we will get a good idea tonight as to who's going to be a contender.
One of the drivers we thought would be a contender in Season 1 is now in the backdrop, Josh Slade. Here is the correct track map, everyone, with the 2.53 miles and 12 total turns and the full hairpin turn. That, once again, is in turn 11 here at this racetrack. Again, going to be very tricky today. Best passing zones, again, the run up to turn 11, as well as the run up to turn number 7. How do you approach this track to try and make moves today? Because we were talking before today, it was hard to make moves, Christian, when the Coke Series came here just a year or so ago.
Yeah, very difficult. When they added that carousel to the layout, everybody kind of expected that you'd then have that run down the drag strip, and you'd have that double tight right would now be a passing opportunity. And to be honest, it kind of really wasn't. Everybody was struggling so much just to get through the carousel that nobody was really able to set up a pass down that straight. So the big passing zone was the final hairpin, and that's really always been the place where if you get a good run through the S's, you will see drivers send it up the inside. And obviously it's a pretty action corner. We've seen some good moves and some bad moves through there.
Taking a look at Daniel Knight, one of the first drivers who will record a time in the 17 machine. Again, riding shotgun coming into this campaign, did not take part in Season 2, but their drivers, some of them, specifically Adam Yun, a part of GSRC's broadcasting commentary crews, has competed in the series in the past. They added Adam Shane to their driver roster, as well as brought in 3 total new competitors for Season 3. Knight was decent in practice in the 139s in the top half of the field. In qualifying, tops that a 138.525 on lap number 1. That's currently second quickest. Bradley Hawley, 137.8 on his first lap.
Yeah, both those drivers actually improving significantly over their practice times, a half a second or more. So it looks like the track's got a little bit more grip right now than it had in the practice session.
We talked about new names and familiar faces. How about familiar face with a new look? Richard Regan Jr., we just seen him in the 46, 2-time defending champion now, is now part of Athlete Booker eSports. He'll be racing this season with James O'Brien, and as previously talked about, Joshua Daniels. They expanded their previous team announcement from 1 car to 3 full cars for this campaign.
Yeah, no, we always actually see Richard Regan Jr. has some of the most striking paint schemes in the series, so it'll be cool to see what he rolls out for tonight and for the rest of the series as well. And actually, right now, he's just been beaten to the pole by Joshua Daniels. Joshua Daniels set a very, very fast time in practice. He set a 37.1. Wasn't actually able to back that up in the actual qualifying session, but still ran a 37.66, which was good enough to take the pole.
Seen there, that was Acosta just moments ago. You've seen moving up to 4th. Here's Medina. We've seen him on various different broadcasts here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Really backing it on down to the point where I think he's nearly clutching it in a technical issue. In fact, end of qualifying. That's how quick qualifying is on road courses, folks. 17 drivers, just 17, have set times for today's race. Let's take a look at how they'll start for today's round. The opening race of the campaign sees Joshua Daniels on the pole by just half a tenth of a second over his teammate Richard Regan Jr. Bradley Hawley, one of the series legends, starts in 3rd. The race director will start alongside one of the top road course drivers in the field tonight, Abner Acosta. Daniel Nart starts in 5th, with Robert Bisson Jr. in 6th. James O'Brien starts in 7th. Mike Knight, David Wilson Jr., Danny Cervantes round out your top 10, Christian.
Colton Lane, the perennial contender, rolls up in 11th. Alongside him is Pat Harvey in 12th. Jay Felton, a driver we saw always in contention on races that had longer runs last season. He's coming in 13th alongside Josh Slade in 14th. Then we've got Charles Sumner in 15th. Blaine Adams in 16th. The last driver to set a qualifying time was Brandon Adams in 17th. Then we've got Scotty Johnson in 18th. Stephen Durbin 19th. And Adam Zemke back in 20th.
Brett Adams starts 21st, Jose Medina starts in 22nd, Adam Yun starts deep in the field in 23rd, was hoping for some luck tonight, to say the very least, in the 21. Robert Jones, the second, starts 24th, Mark Kalin in 25th. Chad Brown, you've seen him spin around for a moment in qualifying, starts 26th. Doral Rance makes an appearance, coming into tonight driving one of the Latart eSports paint schemes. He'll start alongside Matthew Wilford, with Colin Carroll and Jeffrey Ford rounding up the 30 entrants for the start of the campaign. So 30 drivers all set to tackle this 12-turn, 2.53-mile road course here at Sonoma. Full pace lap about to get underway in just a few moments. What are your keys to victory here for today's round?
The biggest thing is getting through the first lap without being involved in an incident, because any time that you lose on a road course, you have no way of getting it back other than just straight up out driving the people around you. So if you get sent for a spin on the first lap, it's a very, very long way back. The biggest key is to always make it through the first lap, get in a good rhythm, and then if you are going to pit, to just stick to your strategy and run your own race. This is definitely a track where it's like the Darlington of road courses. You race the track, you don't race the other people.
Jay Felton will stay in the pit lane on this pace lap. 29 other cars on this track. Race control expecting fuel not to be a factor of note as well, but tires expected to be a potential factor as talked about. Have to see how this race fares today. Who are some of the drivers to keep an eye on, in your opinion?
Well, I think we're going to have a big fight at the front. We've obviously got Joshua Daniels, Richard Regan Jr., Bradley Holly, all very, very tight with each other, all within 3/10 in qualifying right there. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on Abner Acosta, obviously a road course racer, and surprised he's a little bit further away from those guys than I thought he would be. Further down the field, Pat Harvey's driver, who's had very, very good tire wear on long runs. I think he'll be one to watch out for. And a couple of our drivers who didn't actually set a qualifying time. Scotty Johnson, I know, has some experience driving similar cars to this on road courses. Used to race in the old Sucks Out Racing series, so I'll be keeping an eye on him. And Adam Zemke as well, starting back there in 20th. I'm going to be watching for him.
That's a bit of a throwback indeed to the V8 Super Trucks World Championship indeed. I'd like to remind all folks that live timing and scoring is available for tonight's event. Be sure to go to GSRC.tv to keep an eye on where your favorite driver, team, and more are at any point and any time here during today's race. Still a few more moments until the green flag waves. On the front straightaway here, Daniels and Regan Jr. in control of the field for athlete Booker eSports. Your final thoughts before we get to road course racing and thinking outside the oval.
Well, I think if you're one of those drivers who didn't actually manage to set a qualifying time, you can't be expecting to win the race from back there, and you've obviously got to run a smart race and just try and avoid incidents, run your own strategy, and really you've got to get through lap one. I'm predicting there's definitely going to be an incident on the first lap, and that's really going to make or break your race.
Field will go on green. Pace car is in. Daniels, Regan Jr. in control of the field. Everyone all set to go as they approach the starting zone. 2020 Season 3 of the PRL Cup Series is underway from Sonoma Raceway. Massive tire spin for Daniels to start off the race. Regan Jr. already to the late race lead in turn 1 and 2.
Yeah, that was very surprising. We saw Daniels really struggle with the wheel spin there. Actually nearly went around everybody so far, getting through turn 1 without incidents. Everybody doing a great job there. Front half of the field is already all single file.
Belton didn't lose too much time starting for the pit lane of note. Only lost about 7 seconds to the back of the field. One car did go around to the back of the field. Young making contact with Adam Zemke. Everyone else, though, has made it clean through Sector 1, off to Sector 2, now into the carousel, one of the trickiest parts of this road course layout.
Yeah, this is definitely a corner where we're going to have to be watching out for drivers having self-spins on entry. We've seen a couple of people lose the rear of the car. And obviously already one of the drivers who I was going to be keeping an eye on, Adam Zemke, going for a spin on the first lap.
Yeah, he's now back in 29th position. And Felton is only about 1 second behind him now as a result. But as you can see, single file much of the field, and as you talked about, a rhythm track for today. We'll see how long these tires hold up for these drivers as the race progresses.
Yeah, one of the areas I'm really going to be looking out for is through the S's, because that really determines your ability to make a pass into the hairpin at the end of the lap. So drivers that we see strong through there, they're probably going to be the ones we see making the most passes today.
First lap going to the 46. Richard Regan Jr., one of the best road course drivers in this series the past couple of campaigns. Brings them now to 27 laps to go. Now, it's going to be interesting, though, again, how Regan Jr. holds up in the long run. Keep note that on Friday on the iRacing eSports Network with SimSpeed's coverage of NAS Open competition, where you're allowed your own open setups, he had been in the top 10, then crashed in turn 5 and finished the race with the DNF.
Yeah, it is very easy to do around this place. Obviously, there are very few areas that you can go off and actually not have a big wreck. And we've seen drivers even in the Coca-Cola series last season, they would make a small error and then it'd take so long to gather the car back up that they'd make contact with something on the outside of the track. So it is an unforgiving racetrack, and even though there is a lot of runoff, it's strangely easy to find something to hit.
Very clean up towards the front. Separation by about 0.6 of a second between Daniels and Regan Jr. for the time being. And you mentioned drivers finding things to group up and potentially pass. Second pack, for example, sees Mike Knight, the Knight Rider. In the 68, trying to hold on to that grouping. David Wilson Jr. behind them. Josh Slade, Colton Lane also in his train.
Yeah, this is a train which has got a lot of drivers from past seasons in it. Actually, we see Colton Lane is down one spot, but ahead of him, Josh Slade is actually up from 14th into 11th, so he's had a good opening couple of laps.
Oh, there's a crash at the back of the field. The Adams involved in an incident. Several drivers have had to go for the tow truck. Brandon Adams triggering part of a big wreck in the 43. We also had Durbin crash into the tire barrier. Doyle Rance also with significant damage after the issue that happened with Adams. Here's a look at what happened with the 43 machine. He was in 17th spot, and watch that orange 9 come in and smack him.
Yeah, and you see right there, just unfortunately the 9 with nowhere to go. The 43 hits that inside wall and comes straight back onto the track, and there's nothing he can do about that. That's just how the track works, and then it's really blocked, and it's pretty difficult for guys behind to pick their way through this. This is not an easy area of the track, and obviously then with more obstacles, it just becomes even harder for you.
Well, you talked about finding things to hit. Well, they hit some stuff there. Wilson Jr. off the track in the carousel. He is way off the track in the 39 to the point where he is stuck in the grass.
Yeah, this is a corner which we thought would be a problem corner. Actually lost the front end there, just went in too deep, and we've seen actually a couple of drivers get stuck here with this little tire barrier.
I almost saw
he's coming up to the top.
I almost thought he was going to go behind the tires.
Yeah, well, that's what I was actually going to say. I've seen a couple of drivers actually end up behind the tires and then get stuck there. So he was pretty lucky to not have that happen. But you kind of saw on the entry, I thought he'd originally lost the front end, but you see he had to just counter a little bit of a slide, and then that puts him wide, and fortunately straight off in the dirt with no way to pull the car back on.
Chucked back in with the leaders once again. Daniels currently holding on to second spot. Ran a faster time than Regan Jr. last time by. Now, these are two drivers who put in tons of practice time. Daniels 24 total laps. Regan Jr. 36 total laps, including a full 28-lap race distance. That's something that was taken from some other action. If you watch RSR competition race spot, for example, Andrew Freenosh is known, for example, for running full race distances in the practice session to be able to tell how to plan out the race. Regan Jr. did the same thing. Daniels also had some decent short run pace a few dozen times on the track.
Yeah, and that's a very good thing to do if you can kind of maintain enough energy to do that and then run the race afterwards. If you can always do a full distance run, then it gives you a significant advantage. The only disadvantage is that if you're doing it right before the race, obviously you're taking a little bit out of yourself. So you have to keep that in mind. And actually, the front half of the field has really stayed a lot more compressed than I expected. Just based on the qualifying times, I thought we'd see the top 5 really just pull out to a big lead, and they've all actually stayed all pretty close together. All the way back down to 9th is actually only 8.3 seconds off the lead.
That's for the time being at the moment. The train up at the front, still featuring a few drivers. Only position change inside the top 5 has been for the lead off that start. The interesting thing is going to be about Acosta. We were talking about him, 5,000 I rating on the road courses. Now keep in mind, drivers, a lot of them tonight are oval specialists. Acosta is somebody in the 05 at the back end of the top 4 who has a lot of experience on the road courses. Your thoughts on Acosta?
Well, I think he's definitely one to look out for, and obviously qualifying wasn't quite at the same pace, but this driver, I'm pretty certain I've raced before, and I know that he's pretty handy on these road courses. So I think the longer the run goes on, the more experience he has in the car, the better he's going to be. And right now, he's not letting those top 3 get away from him.
The 68 car off of turn 2, lost several positions after he won it off into the sand and the grass, was in the battle for P8 with Danny Cervantes of note, has already been shuffled down to P12 as a result of that mistake. Let's take a look at the GSRC replay, and it's so easy to lose the back end like this multiple times. Yeah, and it looks like he was in a tight battle with the 25 there, and I'm not sure if there might have been any contact on the entry to the corner. You see the 25 is pretty close to him. It looks like actually he just overran the corner on his own and started to have his own moment.
And yeah, very very easy to do there, and that's an extremely difficult corner, and it's made even more difficult if you're a driver who likes to use a H pattern shifter, because you'll be one-handed coming up the hill there.
So that drops him again 4 positions. Biggest mover so far, Mark Kalin up to 15th. P10 also features some of the bigger movers. Right on by Slade, just up the road is a P5. Pat Harvey a +2 now with that move as well. Colton Lane back where he started in 11th position after Harvey made the pass.
Yeah, we've really not seen many changes inside the top 10, but obviously outside of that, as you say, Mark Kalin up in 16th from 25th, and recovering from not setting a qualifying time and doing a great job right there. But at the same time, drivers in the back half of the field are already significantly off the lead group. Obviously, everybody inside the top 10, well, actually back to the top 7 is all within 10 seconds, and then back to 20 seconds out is only down to 12th, so the field really spreads out after that top 7 group.
Here's a look at Kalin, as mentioned, +10. Robert Bisot Jr. as well, having a bit of a wild race so far. Let's take a look at him battling with the 17 machine at the moment. Again, this is the battle now for 5th position. Last time by 3/10 gain by that number 3 machine.
And we see here the 17 just a little bit wide there, the 3 over the inside curve. And there's always a bit of a variance in lines through there. We see 17 actually got a pretty good exit. But a little bit of wheel spin, looks like he's just pushing the tires a touch harder than the 3 here. Seemed really out of shape there, but actually maintaining good speed through the S's.
See if you can try and attack the back end of Dan Unite for a move this time. No. Actually a bit slower that time coming off through turn 10. Had to check up an extra little bit, even more. So back further on the braking point, but still sends it all the way to the apex. And which is back into the Ford Mustang. Now keep in mind, teammates this season for Bisot Jr. for SGE eSports. Pat Harvey, Scotty Johnson for this season.
And obviously those guys going for the team championship this season, and pretty close to picking it up last season too. So it's a good group of guys who'll be very strong on the oval side of things, and just really got to get through the road course rounds with a decent haul of points.
Drivers nose to tail, chance they might have a move in this upcoming lap or so as well. Chance for a move for Pat Harvey for P9, just behind them a little bit. Josh Slade's been ran down by Harvey. Now keep in mind the 67, when the track was around this condition in the practice for more than 2+ hours, Christian. When it was around 118 degrees, Harvey was one of the quickest. Slade makes a mistake, moves out of the way, and that moves him up to 9th. Oh, by the way, as just seen, track temp is 117, so he's in a sweet spot.
Yeah, this is where you'll really start to see drivers who are very kind on their tires start to move to the fore, and we see right there Josh Slade sliding around quite a bit. Pat Harvey's car's looking really nice and stable, and actually what happened right there for him is pretty much the best thing that can ever happen for you at a road course. You catch a guy, and before you really have to start working him over, he just makes a mistake and lets you go. So that really couldn't have worked out any better for Pat Harvey.
Up towards the front again. Acosta, he's on the hunt. He's closed on into the rest of the train. Lap traffic is ahead. This is a chance to take away 3rd position. And Hawley's done a very solid job in the North Star Title Company machine with a brand new look for the 184 this season.
And actually something I was about to mention is that a couple of drivers at the tail end of the field are really starting to struggle, and they're about 1 minute and 20 off the lead. So the lead group is really going to start to catch them pretty soon, and we see our first lap car there, the 24.
And mind you too, Christian, the fall-off already nearly 3 seconds for this grouping of cars. The only driver that hasn't fallen off that significantly has been the leader, in Regan Jr.
Yeah, and that's something that you always struggle with at road courses, but with the high track temperature in Sonoma, it always seems to be one of the absolute worst for it. And I can guarantee you that everybody right now, they want to come and get tires, but it's all going to be about whether it's actually effective to come and get some, because as you say, they've fallen off 3 seconds right now, but if it stabilizes and they stay there, well then the advantage of having a fresh set of tires is just going to do the same thing, and you think that you would gain a lot out of it, but actually you only maybe gain half of what you need.
Absolutely. Keep in mind, Acosta was near dead even with the leader last time by in the fall of note. So we'll see if the 04 can make the move, and we talked about him. You've raced him before in some of the GT machines. GT machines and Cup cars are obviously two very different driving styles that you have to take on the road course.
Yeah, absolutely. You obviously got a lot of downforce with the GT cars, and you tend to really not have to worry so much about wheel spin. A lot of those cars have traction control, so they're much more complicated, but they're much easier to drive overall compared with a car like this.
They've single filed out once again. P11, though, that is currently scrapping a bit because Mike Knight just took away that spot. And they're drifting and sliding about 12th and 13th. Both Scotty Johnson and Colton Lane nearly blew the hairpin corner and nearly slid off into the tire barriers on the left side of the track. You can just see how much he missed the bottom apex of that line just a moment ago here in the GSRC replay, as well as that back grip going away.
Yeah, and that corner right there is pretty critical to lap time, and we tend to see the fastest drivers really holding very, very tight to the inside tires, and actually in some cases we've seen drivers hit those inside tires. But at the same time, obviously, if there's a mistake on the brakes, it's very easy to slide very, very wide, and we have seen some drivers hit the outside wall, though it's actually not as common as you might expect.
Meanwhile, O'Brien just had an issue this time by, was in 7th spot, let by several drivers because he made a mistake trying to make a pass just after, Doyle Rance. Just after he made the pass on, well, his fellow number 9 car here. Watch this run up into turn 4, and this again was a trouble spot in practice.
Yeah, it's a difficult corner. It's downhill braking zone, and you see there, he just goes a little bit wide. He's not actually very wide. Actually makes it through the corner okay. So that must. Whoa! Oh, that's very strange. I don't think we've seen an issue like that. That looks more like a technical problem that put him out on the grass.
Yeah, that car went straight, dropped him back to 9th position as a result, right behind Pat Harvey. Now puts him 24 seconds or so behind the race leader. P3 also still hot and contested. Hawley has been having to deal with the back end of Acosta and also having to trail by Daniels this entire run so far. Coming to 18 laps ago this time by as Yun rides in the grass to let them on by. They haven't been able to find any mistakes from one another to take advantage to make a pass in this group.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It looks like the pace is starting to go away a little bit from Josh Daniels, and it's starting to compress up this group for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, but none of them making significant enough mistakes to allow for a change in position. And Richard Regan Jr. isn't actually getting far ahead, as you see the 05 go a little bit wide there. I think everybody just backed up more than he was expecting.
And you can see as well the differences in how they're taking the S's. How do you take this as a driver, in your opinion here, Christian, in terms of specific gearing?
Well, I've seen some drivers will really just try and kind of drag the car through the S's, and usually you'll find that you only actually use 4th in this little last run. You kind of come out of that little section at the end of the drag strip in 2nd. You'll go to 3rd midway through the S's, and then up to 4th on the run down to the hairpin. But there's a couple of different ways to approach the S's. You see some drivers just really kind of manhandle the car through there. I prefer to try and straighten it out as much as possible and to slide the rear as little as possible. My theory being that that's going to give me better tire wear. But I've seen drivers really slide the car and not run out of tires and extract good lap time. So it's an interesting set of corners, and various approaches can work through there.
Nearly a big mistake up the road you may have seen in turn 3 and 3A. Richard Regan Jr. missed the apex and clipped a bit of the curbing. That lost him about 4/10 up from the rest of the group. So those tires are now starting to go off, it looks like, on that Ford Mustang. Let's take a look at that specific mistake. Again, this is the run in 3 and 3A coming off of turn 2 that he made that mistake in.
Yeah, you see a little bit wide, but and she gets through the corner okay, and then coming down to the carousel turn. Everything looks all right at the moment. Just a little bit wide on the apex there, but didn't look like any significant time loss.
Again, it was 3 and 3A. That was the view going into turn 4 we've seen on the replay, but the gap is still fairly decent. He's taking these corners much more safer now, though. He had been running the 140.9s for much of this run. Do you think the tires have finally came off that Ford Mustang?
Definitely looks like he's struggling to get the nose pointed a little bit through the S's there. So he turned in and the nose just decided it wasn't going to go, and he went straight a little bit. But within this group as well, I've seen the 05 of Abner Acosta. Actually, he made a couple of mistakes trying to get around the 184 and down into turn 4 last time by. He had to kind of take a very wide line through there, lost a lot of time, so he's going to have to run this group back down.
141.6 ran by him last time by with a mistake. Now 1.2 seconds the gap. You can see the times at the bottom of the screen. Now, one thing that has to be discussed as well is when you ran this track back in 2019 with the Coke Series, this was at the time there was still high downforce on the road courses that season. It's now low downforce again for the road course package in 2020. For these drivers, how do you adjust to that? Because again, it's back to around 2018 downforce levels where, again, it's been really tricky on grip on corner entry and exit.
Well, it really just multiplies the tire wear and kind of the drop-off, because with the high downforce, you were sliding around less. The tires still dropped off, and it was still a very difficult track to drive. It's just with the downforce kind of helped you with the sliding, and the corner speeds were obviously up quite a bit. And so really, it's kind of the best way I can describe it with the low downforce versus high downforce is it's as though right from the go you're now on 10-lap old tires compared to what it was last year.
Insert the people who burn up their tires with the majesty of a lot of things to panic mode.
Yeah, this is definitely not an easy entrance to road course racing. So I think if we have any guys in here who this is their first time doing road courses, because I know in the past it's changed around a lot recently. In the past, drivers used to just absolutely avoid these racetracks, and we actually saw even in the Coke Series, drivers would go into road course races with the attitude of, well, I'm not a good road course racer. That's it. That's just going to be a week where I take no points, and you can't do that anymore. And I think generally across the service, the level of road course experience, especially on the oval, well, definitely on the oval side, has just increased so much. And now we don't tend to see specialists as much. We just see everybody's gotten a lot better at road course racing.
And it's been kind of a necessity for drivers across the service, not just in this series, but all across the board if they want to go up the ladder. Road to Pro this season has a couple road courses. The Roval early in the schedule, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in the second half of the season. In the Coke Series last season, there were a couple road courses. Heck, you guys have Watkins Glen, the season finale for PRL, as part of this year's schedule.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, in the past, we would only have one road course, and then back in 2016 with the Pro Series, they put a road course in, and I think that kind of really started to change with things. As you said, obviously this year's Truck Pro Series that had 2 road courses in it, and the Coca-Cola Series for last year and this year has 2 road courses. See, last year we ran Sonoma and the Roval, and this year we're going to run Watkins Glen and the Roval.
Position change, by the way. That's Danny Cervantes and James O'Brien, who have been going back and forth for 7th. Last time by, O'Brien had made a pass. Now Cervantes makes the pass on back. They are continuously, though, still having their tires fall off, and you can see the difference now from O'Brien. Remember, he was the man who had that technical issue a little while ago as they reach halfway this time.
Yeah, O'Brien on a little bit of a recovery here, but at the same time, Cervantes was very, very fast in practice and actually probably underperformed a little bit in qualifying. We see having a huge moment right there.
That was a heart and hand over mouth moment. Cervantes nearly said hello to the tire barrier, drops back to 9th position as a result of that mistake. Here's a look.
You see there, just got too late on the brakes and probably too heavy on the brake trying to compensate for his mistake. And if you're running a lot of rear brake in the car, it will kick the rear end out, and it got him rotated around the corner, but definitely not in the manner that he would have liked. And after a lot of hard work to gain spots, he's lost 2 right there. We
mentioned the traffic and that being a factor in this race today. It's been a major factor for a lot of these groups. They've been losing nearly a second or so trying to get by some drivers. Here's Slade and Mike Knight's battle, for example. That's Jeffrey Ford up the road, who has already been lapped once or twice in this race. And the more you get stuck behind these drivers in the wrong places like the carousel here, the more time they lose for other groups.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's not really a lot that the lap cars can do. They can obviously pull to the side on straightaways, but with so much of this track kind of just being continuous corners, obviously we see the carousel is pretty much an impossible place to let people by. The same as if you catch a car in the backstretch S's. There's no opportunity for them to let you go. We see it 34 round wide, but got back to just cover the apex off.
A little bit tight for that battle, forced to check up. They're still off and going, though. With us being at halfway, though, Christian, the back half runners, some of them who are laps down, have elected to pit. Chad Brown and Adam Young have both taken scheduled pit stops in the past lap.
Yeah, they definitely think that's a safe choice for those guys. Obviously, they're not in contention for a top 10. They're really just trying to get to the end of the race and pick up some points. So why not come down for a set of tires, especially if you're not in a fight with somebody?
That weighs out the question. Say if you're in this group of cars in the battle for third on back, do you even dare come down and pit for tires?
See, I think if you're in this top group of 4, obviously if you're Richard Regan Jr., then you're kind of up against it, because if your competition is probably just going to choose to do the opposite of you. But say you're Abner Acosta, you've been behind Bradley Holly for quite a while now. The next car back is Robert Bissell Jr. He's 10 seconds behind. I think Acosta's in a position where he could afford to come down, take tires, and pretty much guarantee that he's at worst going to end up back where he was in 4th, but maybe have an opportunity here to actually get something done, maybe get as high as 2nd, or if the undercut and the tires are really worth that much, might actually have an opportunity to win the race.
That's going to be the interesting part. Again, we talked about fuel would be tight. Speaking of tight battles, though, still remember Slade and Knight? Back and forth now. The 68 giving the squeeze this time to Slade. And a bit of a bobble nearly hit the Chevrolet Camaro, but this time able to make the pass. Again, that's for 10th.
He got it done there at the end of the drag strip with the double right. A little bit of a mistake on the old tires. Really kind of helped him out right there.
But you almost have to be the aggressor to try and make some of these passes, yes, even with the tires, because if you just stay in a single file line, eventually, the driver who wants to be the aggressor will make the pass on back. The curious thing's going to be, will Johnson and Wilson Jr. do a similar move to try and make a pass on Slade? They're the cars right behind them.
Yeah, that's the difficulty when you have a train building up behind a car. If you're kind of just sitting in the group, not attempting to make a pass, as you say, you're kind of putting the onus then on the next guy in line, and if they make a pass on you and then they get the job done on the car that you're all stuck behind, obviously it's an instant loss of a position, and really there's a fine line between being aggressive and getting the job done and kind of being over the top, and it's really difficult to walk, especially at a road course.
Bit of tire lockage this time from Knight. Once again, side-by-side, Slade trying and make a move into the carousel. Outbreak side-by-side behind him. Wilson Jr. taking the line from Scotty Johnson. Slade not able to make the line stick. This means Wilson Jr. takes away the bottom, nearly makes contact. All the cars are sliding. Wilson Jr. 3 wide, heading off to turn 7. Tries to block off Slade. Slade locks up the tires, and Wilson Jr. makes 2 passes in the span of 3 corners.
And that's about as good an example as what I was talking about as you could have right there. Obviously, there'd been that battle there with the 34 for quite a number of laps. And then immediately, as soon as there's a mistake, just get the job done on both cars and away you go.
And now Slade's moving over to the left side of the S's here, too. He does have damage on the right rear. Scotty Johnson, the SGE eSports machine, now looking to move up into the 11th position. Check that 12th. Not able to make the pass. Doesn't send it up and in, but does still have the pace to make a move in the next lap or so. Coming up to 12 laps to go this time by.
You're going to really good drive off the hairpin, but unfortunately not really a passing opportunity down into turn 1.
See how they fare out in a bit here, but Richard Regan Jr. again is the leader. He's pulled back the pace a little bit. He's fallen off some laps with some of the traffic, but coming to 11 laps to go, holds now a 5-second lead. So the gap is growing a bit now for the 46. And remember, he was the strongest road course driver in this series back in Season 2.
Yeah, and I think right now he's just managing the pace. Obviously got a pretty big advantage over Joshua Daniels, but that battle for second has kind of fizzled out as well. Looks like Abner Acosta started to fall off a little bit. Bradley Holly's starting to fall off just a little bit from Joshua Daniels, so everybody's kind of getting comfortable at this point with no real fights now for second place.
See those gaps now on the bottom side of your screen. Once again, remind you, live timing and scoring is available for this race at GSRC.tv to keep an eye on where your favorite teams, drivers, and more are across Sonoma Raceway today. Holly doing a very stellar job today, very consistent. Been running around the 142.9s this entire run. Remember, a multiple-time series champion back in 2019, now race director for this series. Backed out of the championship in the late going last season after being the potential points leader in the final half of the season.
Yeah, that was a little strange. I'm not really sure why he elected to make that decision, but obviously this season I'm hoping he sticks with it the whole way, because we saw he had some great battles with Richard Regan Jr. throughout last season and in the past, so there'll definitely be a championship fight between those two if Bradley Holly does contest the full season.
Remember, Holly missed the first race of Season 2, and with the drop had been estimated to be the points leader coming to the final 3 races before he parked the 184 for the rest of the campaign. But still looking for a potential podium finish here, with a consistency coming to 10 laps to go here this time by. At the moment, 20 cars are still on the lead lap on this circuit. We haven't mentioned much Joshua Daniels throughout this run. He's been quietly running in second spot this entire stint as well. Outside of that mistake at the start of the race with the tire spin in this section of the track, he's been very consistent as well. He's been trading fastest lap times with Regan Jr. throughout this run.
Yeah, and he's been doing a great job. Obviously been under pressure for the second spot for pretty much the entirety of the race and lost the lead right off the bat to Richard Regan Jr., but the thing is, when it comes down to points, you really do have to consider that it sounds strange to say it, but it's not actually necessary to win the race. If you're running, say right now, it looks like he doesn't have the pace to fight Richard Regan Jr. But if he can finish second, he's really minimizing the points loss, so that when they go to a track where maybe he's better than Regan Jr., he can immediately flip it back around. And that's really the thing when it comes to championships and points racing. It's definitely not always about winning the race.
That's actually a really good point to make as well, especially since there are various different ways you can score points throughout a championship campaign. Once again, if you have a clean race, you can get a bonus point for that. If you lead the most laps, you get bonus points for that. You get extra bonus points for being the race winner, for example, as well. A couple of the other different point totals you can gain throughout an event. Pole position, got him 2 points. Fastest lap gets you a point as well in the campaign. And once again, as mentioned, 3 incidents or less gets you a bonus point throughout each race of the season. So Daniels does technically have the point total to stay just about dead even, in fact, with Regan Jr. after the first round already.
Yeah, exactly, and that's got to be the key here into what he's playing into, is that he can finish in second spot and actually come out with an nigh-on identical points tally to Richard Regan Jr. And so it really just comes down to whether he can hold Bradley Holly off for the remainder of this race, and Holly's looking pretty strong right now, though.
Yeah, Holly last time by gained a couple tenths, really good in the braking zone. Daniels losing some ground in Sector 1 this time. 8 laps to go this time by. We'll see if Daniels can hold on. Holly using all the racetrack behind him. Bobbled off the corner, though, off into turn 4 once again. He's adding a little extra bit of apex speed, it seems, to try and close this gap on the 77 a bit more.
Yeah, now he's got a little bit of breathing room now that Acosta's fallen off the back of him. He's really starting to move around the track, and right there we saw the carousel drove in just a little bit deep, but just trying a different line to see if there's anything out there, and without a car hassling him, he's really got the opportunity to do that.
See if Hawley elects to try and jump forward in these next couple laps again. He has been following the back end of that Chevrolet Camaro this entire race. Better corner exit, though, coming off 7 and 7A, though, for Daniels. Pulls an error 2 to 3 car lengths in this group through the S's.
Yeah, and I think it's really going to come down to whether Hawley can hold close to him through 7 and 7A and then get a run on through the S's before the final hairpin. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to make a pass.
It's one of the closest battles on the racetrack at the moment of note here as these drivers think outside the oval today. 141.9 set by Regan Jr. last time by. Daniels coming across the stripe this time by, for comparison's sake, recording a 142.5. So the pace is definitely balancing back towards Regan Jr.'s way, up at the front now, up by 8 seconds. The pace also, though, near dead even for second and third still in this group.
Yeah, it's definitely a tight fight for second, and I think it's just going to keep ebbing and flowing all the way to the end of the race, and it's really going to come down as to whether we see a mistake either from Bradley Hawley or Josh Daniels here, and I think that's going to decide the second spot.
Every point matters, as talked about in a championship fight. P16, Curley is scrapping. That's where Mark Halen is currently at the moment in the 62. At the other end of the racetrack, here's a look that he's reached the back end of Blaine Adams. Now, the interesting thing with the Adams cars, Adams Family Racing, that is a whole family of drivers who is running together in the series, the campaign. Adams gets hit by Kalen after he messes up the corner.
Yeah, that was a huge send, and he was immediately up on the voice chat apologizing to him. I think he just completely missed that right there, and immediately lets the position back.
Yeah, that was massive wheel hop. It seemed a bit of an overshoot from Kalen. And understandable why he gave the position back. You want to get the job done cleanly, Christian, those types of fights.
Yeah, and especially for say 16th spot, it's one of those times where if you catch a guy and you're gonna make a pass, then there's no need for it to be ultra aggressive. You know, it's not for a race win or that kind of deal. And obviously, right there, it definitely looked like he just overshot his braking point quite significantly, and tried to hook it to the inside, and unfortunately, the 14 was there.
To quote the conversation from Adams after that, he would have been impressed if that line stuck. Adams, by the way, just made a pass on Charles Sumner after the 98 made a mistake. Looking back at second again on the screen, though, Daniels still keeping in front of Hawley. It's back within only a couple car lengths amongst these two. But once again, right about this point has been where Hawley has been getting more and more difficult in terms of providing pressure, but also having more difficulty himself trying to actually close in more than the 2 car lengths.
Yeah, and on the entry, he's always driving deeper into the carousel, and it's been hurting him actually on the exit. This time, it looks like he's the closest he's been in a good while, and right through 7 there is really, really on the back of the 77. And yeah, I think this is probably his opportunity if he gets to run through the S's.
Tries to add a little extra bit of throttle in 8A. Back through turn 9 this time, loses the time though. So once again, you mentioned the speed in the carousel. He's trying that extra bit of speed, it seems, in this part of the track. And every time, he's been losing all the ground he's made up whenever he's got within a couple car lengths.
Yeah, and for an effective pass into the final corner, you've really got to be right on the back of the car ahead of you as you come out of that last fast right-hander. And if you're not, the straight's just not long enough to get a toe and get alongside.
About 6 laps to go this time by for these drivers in what has been an interesting opening to the campaign and a bit of a slide for Hawley. That was an interesting slide from the Wetback Racing driver. He's one of the drivers, part of that Jelly Rolls Racing organization as well this campaign, by the way, and that was nearly a Jelly Roll moment that nearly sent the car rolling to the sand.
Yeah, and that inside curb is one that you really do want to avoid. At best, you have a moment like that where it kicks the rear end of the car around. In the past, we've seen some drivers actually manage to roll the car over on that curb, so you do have to be careful with it. It's not one that you want to be using.
So at this point, what do you do if you're Holly? Once again, we've mentioned the different lines he's taken, how more aggressive he's been on some of these corners. At this point, it seems right about this half of the racetrack, he's been struggling compared to Daniels. What does he do if he wants to try and take away second?
Well, just looking at the lines, it looks like, especially on this first left-hander, Daniels has been a lot neater through this corner, and right now Holly's actually having his best run through here. It really just comes down to straightening out that section and then getting a really good run off this last right. And Holly's just wide of the apex and loses that opportunity. You have to stay tight to the inside of that right-hander, otherwise you can't get the power down onto the straight.
Bad news as well, if you're in the middle of that fight for second, take a look. That's 3 lap cars that you get to have fun. And that's where a lot of the time's been lost too throughout this race for second on back. Regan Jr.'s been able to get by quicker, then second, third, fourth, etc. throughout this race. So traffic may play a factor here, especially since one of them is right along the curbing. The grouping of second just got around a lap car Medina, who is around the curbing this time. Regan Jr., meanwhile, is in clean space.
Yeah, this is exactly what Joshua Daniels doesn't want to see. He wants to see a clean track right now. He doesn't want to see cars that he's got to make his way around, because these lap cars, they're definitely opportunities for Bradley Holly, especially if they check up Josh Daniels in an area where he's actually very fast. So say if Daniels catches one of these cars in the S's, that's an absolute opportunity for Holly into the final corner.
Bit tighter through the exit of the carousel. Better corner exit, though, for Daniels once again in the Athlete Booker eSports car. 4 to go this time by. Daniels trying to hold on to a Team 1-2. Holly smoking the tires again, trying to keep it tight in 7A. Once again, Daniels using every piece of real estate to get that corner exit that he needs.
Holly just a little bit too aggressive there on the exit of 7A. Spun the tires up and fallen a couple of car lengths back, and I really thought that this might have been his opportunity. We see the lap cars just a little bit too far ahead to slow Josh Daniels up, but into the start of the next lap, it's definitely going to be a problem for him.
The cars up the road, Colton Lane in 19th, 24th, Brandon Adams, Stephen P. Durbin recovering from crashing into the tire barriers in 25th, and that car, Matthew Wilford, who is in 29th, last car running, who has had several off-track excursions, now 4 or 5 laps down. So, traffic about to get very thick. They are only 10 car lengths up the road, will be a factor in the final 3.5 laps of this race. So at this point, if you're Daniels and Holly, how do you approach that traffic knowing that could be the factor between who finishes second and third in this race?
If you're Holly, your main objective is just to be close enough to Josh Daniels so that if there is a problem, then that you're going to have the opportunity to make the best of it and maybe get around Josh Daniels. If you're Daniels, you want to do the opposite. You want to have as big a gap as possible so that you have as much thinking time as possible to maybe get around. You see Holly made a big mistake in the carousel that's really going to hurt him. Although he hasn't actually lost out as much as I thought. I really thought by being that wide there he was going to lose a significant amount of time, at least a second, but it actually didn't hurt him. It looked like there was some grip out there.
Did lose some time, though, coming off the carousel by nearly going off into the grass. Looked like he was trying to diamond the corner a little bit, trying to use the high line, then arcing it on down to the bottom since he's been trying to stay next to those rumble strips. That didn't work, however. Now, back to the S's still. Red box disappeared for now. That's a 1.2 second gap now.
Yeah, the main areas where it looks like Josh Daniels is really strong is definitely the corner exit and the main traction zones around the track, especially out of the final corner, out of 7A. He just looks like he's much stronger than Holly. Where Holly looks strong is he just looks strong in all the kind of mid to high speed corners. It looks like he's just rotating through them a little bit better than Josh Daniels is.
That mistake come to bite him is going to be the question. Brandon Adams just up the road now from the 77. And This is in a section where Daniels has lost time several times, along with Hawley in Section 1 through 2, 3, 3A in turn 4. Didn't get to Adams, though, for that particular part. Traffic also fairly thick up the road for the race leader of note. As Adams moves out of the way, that holds up Hawley a bit on corner exit.
Yeah, definitely got in Holly's way right at the point where Holly's been struggling on that corner exit. But now there's still one car that's going to get into this fight, so Holly just needs to focus on closing the gap without making mistakes, just so that he's there at that next opportunity.
And right here on the replay, Hawley forced a lift and loses all the momentum he had gained on that lap to close in. However, the delta, he didn't drop too much time. He actually closed up 2/10 after that in the carousel. So he is keeping within reaching distance. But the problem's going to be, is he going to get within passing distance for a chance with 2 to go? This may become just take the points and hold on type of situation now.
Yeah, exactly. That's really the big thing that he's hurting himself with right here. By falling back, he's reducing the number of opportunities he has to kind of plan where he's going to make his move, and it might come down to just having one opportunity. And obviously, if it doesn't come off, then that's really been the downfall of falling back. Is that the reduced number of opportunities means you obviously can't try as many different things. And that's where it comes down to kind of a Hail Mary on the last lap.
Tries to send a Hail Mary up the hillside, up to turn 2. Nearly sent it near full throttle up the hills and much deeper. Closed in 3 car lengths to the back end of the 77. 9/10 still the gap, though, with a lap and a half to go. Hoping for one mistake. Better corner exit for Hawley. He closes in now down to only about 7/10 of a second for second.
Yeah, that's the first real mistake we've seen from Josh Daniels there, and it wasn't a big one, but it's just enough to just slide the rear of the car and just upset those rear tires.
They will have the potential of significant traffic depending on how it fares out up the road. Of note, Adam Zemke was able to get up to 17th, just got shuffled to 18th just up the track from them. Charles Sumner's now in that spot. Colton Lane, the next driver, up the road as well. The 19th place car will potentially be someone they reach. Hawley nearly touches the back end of the 77, now within 1 car length in his best corner.
Yeah, this time, this right here, this is his opportunity. He has to stay close to Daniels to do the S's, not go wide at any point, especially that last right-hander, and then he's gonna have the opportunity to maybe send something into the last corner.
White flag this time by for the battle for second. This could be very intense. Back through the hairpin for the second to last time. No look from Hawley yet. Dead even on the brakes. Tighter corner apex and exit alongside the tires. But a tire bobble, though, for the 184 as they take the white.
Yeah, just looking at that, you can see that Josh Daniels had tried to go a little bit to the inside. Was definitely looking in his mirror for the send, but Hawley ran the corner normally and then just got a little bit loose on exit.
A dominant race, meanwhile, for the race leader, Richard Regan Jr. He's quietly led every single lap today and ran away by 11 seconds. No need for fuel and tires throughout this race today for the 46. Able to make it towards the end. The battle for second, though, side by side. Hawley, the send, locks it up, contact. Hits the front nose of Daniels. Will Hawley give the position back is the question. He moves to the left side of the track, more careful on the throttle. Daniels trying to hug the right side of the track in the carousel. Hawley holds on to second for now.
Yeah, and Hawley just a little bit too deep there, but I did think that was going to be his chance. He was very, very close to the first sector, and that's where he's been better. But we've seen from Josh Daniels that the last part of the lap, the S's, he's been better than Hawley. He's looking to the inside. He's there, and Hawley's giving him the room.
We'll use contact, though. Remember, contact between the two. Bit of a squeeze. Hawley holds on. One more chance for them. Up the road, Regan Jr. coming towards the checker flag in the hairpin. Hawley, major mistake. He bobbles around on the curbs. Regan Jr. coming towards the final corner. Looks to dominate. Hawley looks to hold on. Regan Jr. taking the checker flag. He wins the season opener at Sonoma as his teammate looks to try and hold on to a Team 1-2. Daniels to the inside. Holly on the outside. Holly smacks the wall. Lap car moves out of the way. Daniels retakes second. Checker flag waves. Daniels makes it a 1-2 for Athlete Booker eSports.
Yeah, that last corner was wild, and that wasn't how I expected a lap car to influence it, but Holly didn't actually hit the wall. He bounced off the door of the 33 right there on exit, and it just tightened him up to the point where he didn't have the drive off.
What a crazy final sequence of corners for that battle, though. Let's take a look. And that's the Northwest car. You see that he bounced off of Holly right on that apex. That lap car did hit the tires right here.
It's just enough. The contact with the 184 and the 33 to just check him up so that Josh Daniels got the run to the line.
What a crazy finish for the second step of the podium. And the second position in this race today. Richard Regan Jr., though, leads every single lap to open up the campaign and gets back to his winning ways. Post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments here on the Global SimRacing Channel. You're watching the Precision Racing League Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings from Sonoma Raceway. Welcome back to the Global SimRacing Channel's coverage of the Precision Racing League opening campaign race for the Cup Series, sponsored by iRacing Flea Market, Diecast Kings, Road Trip Transport, and ButtKicker. It was a butt-kicking performance today for Richard Regan Jr. back to his winning ways as the winningest driver in 2020. In this series, he wins by 16 seconds over his teammate Joshua Daniels. It's a Team 1-2 for Athlete Booker Esports in their first official race as a group. Rowley Hawley came home third, those drivers all standing by for post-race coverage. Abner Acosta quietly ran in fourth after being in the mix for the top three much of the race. Robert Bisson Jr. quietly came home in fifth. James O'Brien recovered from some mistakes early on to sixth, with Daniel Knight in seventh. Pat Harvey came home eighth, Danny Cervantes in ninth. David Wilson Jr. rounded out your top 10, Christian.
And Mike Knight came home in 11th, started 8th, and just lost a couple of spots. And Scotty Johnson, one of the big movers, up from 18th, came home in 12th. Jay Felton made that pit lane start, had a quiet run up to 13th. Josh Slade, the last driver on the lead lap, in 14th. And we had Adam Zambicki. He made up 5 spots from the start, came home 15th, with Colin Carroll in 16th. Brad Adams was 17th, Mark Kalin 18th, Blaine Adams in 19th, and Charles Sumner in 20th.
Chad Brown 21st, Colton Lane 22nd, Robert Jones the second and 23rd. Stephen Durbin recovered from a crash into the tire barrier to finish in 24th. Brandon Adams 2 laps down in 25th. Adam Young a rough race in 26th, but the crush in front end came to the checkered flag. Jeffrey Ford came home in 27th. Medina 28th, 3 laps down. Wolford, the last car, running 8 laps down, 29th. Doyle Rance, the only DNF of the race, 21 laps down was the total for him. But today, Richard Regan Jr. starts off another campaign with another victory. How are you feeling with that dominant performance here today at Sonoma?
Yeah, it's good to pick off back where we were last season, closing out that season as a champion. And I think that's 7 wins in a row now, so feeling pretty good.
Now, today was a tricky racetrack to start a campaign, mind you, at. It's a track where you're running top 10, mind you, in NIS Open in the iRacing eSports Networks' coverage before you had crashed in Turn 5 in a recovery today in that to come away and dominate in this one. What makes this track so tricky in your opinion?
Yeah, so we only go to 3 road courses. We go to here, Sonoma, Watkins Glen, and the Charlotte Roval. And I think this is definitely the most technical because there's a lot of elevation change. And, there is at Watkins Glen too, but that's not really so much in the corners. Every corner on this track is very different. The surface is always very hot and slick, very worn out. So it's just a good challenge. And I did a lot of practice this week, and this is one of my favorite tracks to come to, so it's good to get a dominant performance out like that.
Now, this season overall, expected to be a very challenging one. We talked about it a little bit before today's broadcast. 2 mile-and-a-half circuits, 2 intermediates, 2 short tracks, Michigan as the 2-miler, 2 road courses, one of them being today, and Darlington on top of that. In your opinion, how difficult will this season be to win a championship with so many difficult tracks and different types of tracks all scattered throughout the schedule?
Yeah, it will definitely be difficult. I have a pretty good short track program. I really love the short tracks. I have a pretty good road course program, and I've been working on my mile-and-a-half program. That's starting to get up there. The 2-milers are pretty tricky because it's basically a big Daytona, so it's really anything goes in survival. So, it's good to start the season off at a road course with the win. Getting some good points. Starting to build that buffer. We'll see what happens. We just got to try to stay consistent. Last season we started out pretty bad. We would either be in the top 5 or we'd be wrecked. So I'd dig out of the hole for that. But let's hope that this season we can keep the momentum going.
Next race at Chicagoland, your quick thoughts.
Yeah, Chicagoland's one of those mile-and-a-halves that doesn't really race like another one, like any other mile-and-a-half. Very aggressive on tires, so just got to put in a lot of practice, and hopefully we got some good.
Anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, I got to thank you guys at GSRC for broadcasting. I got to thank all the series sponsors. I got to thank my mom, my dad, and my aunt for always watching. And I got to give a shout out to my teammates, Joshua Daniels and James O'Brien. James had some issues with his computer, so he wasn't able to get the finish he wanted. But me and Joshua got 1-2. And I got to thank athletebooker.com for coming on board with me this season. Neonism, if you want to paint, go to facebook.com and search Neonism. Tell them I sent you. I got to thank everyone at Legacy Esports, ButtKicker, Abruzzi Raceway, Multiple Sclerosis Society, AMSOIL, Susan G. Coleman, and everyone that watches every week.
Congratulations on the victory tonight, Richard. Dominating performance. That was Richard Regan Jr. coming away with the victory today in the 46. His teammate Joshua Daniels rounds out a 1-2 debut for Athlete Booker Esports. He is with Christian Challoner.
Josh, that looked like a really intense race the whole way long. You were in a pretty tight fight with Bradley Holly and Abner Acosta. Really, the whole race, Acosta fell away a little bit at the end, but obviously a pretty crazy way to get that second spot back on that last lap right there.
Yeah, it was intense, man. I'm sweaty. It was a kind of intense way I lost it as well.
Yeah, it did look like it was a little bit of an interesting pass, and we'd actually noticed through the first sector of the lap that Bradley Holly was a little bit better through there, and you were a little bit better through the latter half of the lap, and obviously it kind of crossed over there. And I mean, really, we were talking a little bit about the championship and points wise, and it looked kind of at the midway point of the race that you were pretty content to try and take that second spot. And in terms of the points, you must be pretty happy with how the night's gone. You came home second. You're going to get the pole bonus as well, and it sets you up good for the championship, right?
Yeah, man, I couldn't ask for much better. You know, Reagan, he's kind of unmatched on his tire wear, man. He's a real good driver, and maybe next week I'll have something for him.
Well, next week we head to the Chicagoland, so a very different challenge, and obviously back at a mile and a half, a bit more normal for this series. And you got any expectations, thoughts on that racetrack?
No, you know, I'm just gonna put in a lot of laps, you know, and hopefully I can come up with being fast enough at the end of the week, you know.
That's a good deal, and you definitely put on an exciting show for us tonight for that second spot. Now, before we let you go, is there anybody that you'd like to thank?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Athlete Booker, Levi Designs, Diecast Kings, ButtKicker, the PRL, and the GSRC for putting on a good show.
All right, well, thank you for coming out to chat to us tonight, and once again, congratulations on the pole and the second place finish.
Hey, thanks, man.
That was Joshua Daniels coming home in second tonight. Bradley Holly came home in third. He's with me now in the broadcast booth. Bradley, first things first, how do you feel coming home in third tonight after a strong run for you?
Pretty good. I wasn't fully confident with how I was driving the track this weekend. So I mean, with third place, I'm pretty happy with.
Talk us through that battle on the last lap with you and Daniels, because you guys traded paint a couple times, in fact, on the last lap. In fact, you also traded paint as well with the lap car, who nearly hit the tire barrier in the final corner.
Yeah, going into, I don't remember what corner it was. I mean, I locked up the right front just a little bit, and that just sent me out towards the edge of the track. I was trying my hardest not to hit Joshua. That was the last thing I wanted to do. Then going into hairpin, I felt like he had just enough of a nose there to where if I came down, he was going to turn me or I was going to go across his nose. So tried to give him extra room, and then realized the lap car was there, and I wasn't going to back off. I guess, in a way, used the lap car to try to get a better run, but didn't work out the way I was hoping.
Yeah, it actually slowed you down a little bit, it looked like there, Bradley.
Oh, yeah, it definitely did. And the fact that I was trying to stay in second gear instead of first to keep from tire spin. I was hoping Joshua was going to spin the tires more.
Now, this championship very tricky this season because we talked about it a little bit with Richard. 2 mile-and-a-half tracks, 2 intermediates, 2 road courses, a 2-mile track in Michigan, and Darlington, along with the short tracks. In your opinion, what is going to be the most challenging parts of trying to win a championship, especially with this schedule?
Consistency. I mean, a lot of these tracks drive different. I mean, you got Indy, Pocono, and then Darlington. Those are probably three of the toughest tracks to try to stay consistent without hitting either a wall or doing something silly.
Real quick, your thoughts on Chicagoland next race?
We'll see. I mean, it's gonna be first couple laps are probably gonna be just like a plate track, but after that, it's gonna be come down to who can save the right front better.
Anyone you want to thank before you let you go?
I'd like to thank you guys for broadcasting us week in and week out, North Star title, and the Waterback guys.
Congratulations on a top 3 run, Bradley. Good, clean race for much of the run.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Bradley Hoya, along with Joshua Daniels and Richard Regan Jr. for joining us for post-race coverage. Now, Christian, your thoughts on how this race progressed today here at Sonoma?
Well, I'm not really surprised that we saw a big spread throughout the field, and obviously we saw a pretty tight fight throughout the race for second spot. Regan Jr. really pulled away in that second half of the race, though, so I think he was kind of just managing tires for the beginning half, and that really paid off. Obviously came home with a 16-second lead, and I think for a lot of drivers, they kind of just sort of struggled through the event to pick up some points before they head back to tracks that they're more used to with the 1.5 miles. But obviously with road courses bookending both ends of the series, what we saw tonight is definitely going to come into play when we get down to that championship finale.
Next track is a type of layout we've seen many times in last season, the 1.5 miles. Chicagoland, though, as talked about by Richard Regan Jr., drives differently than the other 1.5 miles. Your thoughts on Chicagoland for these drivers?
Yeah, Chicagoland's a pretty fun racetrack. Obviously, a D-shaped oval compared to some of the more recent quad ovals that we've seen, and especially through 3 and 4, we can tend to see drivers get a little bit tight on the exit and get into the wall, and that's really the opportunity to get a big run on people down into 1. So it's quite a driver's track. It's a bit of a rougher 1.5 miles, so it should be a pretty good race.
I think so too. It's going to be absolutely entertaining when we go to Chicagoland and see how these drivers adapt. But we'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action from Sonoma Raceway. We'd also like to thank Charles Sumner and the rest of the Precision Racing League for organizing this strong series. We'd also like to thank the many sponsors who are a part of this season's campaign. Go to the iRacing Flea Market, the official round sponsor of round number 1, as well as the series sponsors Diecast Kings, Road Trip Transport, and ButtKicker. We'd also like to thank the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed up on your screen, with additional thanks to Jude Lawn, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of our great work. Thanks to the team today as well, and Christian and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about Global SimRacing Channel, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storeandby.com. Or you can check our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss a moment here on the Global SimRacing Channel. As mentioned, the next race on the calendar is at Chicagoland. That takes place at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:50 a.m. GMT, 5:50 p.m. Pacific Time for what should be an entertaining second race of the campaign. We also have many upcoming races for other series listed up on your screen, so be sure to check those out and mark them down your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. I'll see you on the track.
We'll be right back.